webinar on account-based marketing. With this webinar, our speakers will give you insights on account-based marketing, and it is also a curtain raiser for our upcoming program on the same topic. During the program that is scheduled to start in January 2021, the participants will get a complete immersion in this topic along with a simulation that will help them implement this concept effectively within their organizations. This webinar has been organized by ISB Center for Business Markets, also referred to as ISB-CBM. The center provides a platform for collaboration between industry and academia in the areas of marketing and sales. ISB-CBM is committed to helping organizations based in India and Asia find innovative next generation pathways to grow their business profitably, especially in the era of rapid change that is a reality of today's world. The mandate for the center is to get research output, which is focused on practice, and also conduct workshops on topics relevant to marketing and sales. Allow me to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Shivina Kumar. Shivina is a senior brand manager at Wix Answers in New York and is a specialist in account-based marketing. She's a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, and her focus is on marketing and branding in technology-intensive companies. She has been invited to speak on these topics at several conferences and university executive programs. She is currently developing a comprehensive business simulation on this topic to help people learn how to implement ABM in their own organizations. Our other speaker is Professor Piyush Kumar, Associate Professor of Marketing at the Terry College of Business at the University of Georgia and the President of Statistics Incorporation, a marketing advisory firm. He has previously taught at the Wharton Business School, Vanderbilt University and Rice University, and has won multiple MBA Professor of the Year awards. He is the co-author of a management book titled Decision Equity, the ultimate metric to connect marketing actions to profits. His area of expertise includes service management, marketing strategy, and brand management. He has been engaged in consulting, speaking, and teaching capacities with a number of leading organizations across the world, including Merck, BMC Software, Coca-Cola, ICICI Lombard, ITC, and Schneider Electric. Professor Piyush has published on a variety of topics in almost all leading marketing journals. Professor Piyush holds a BTech from IIT Kanpur, an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and a PhD from Purdue University. Prior to his PhD, he spent several years in marketing and brand management across a variety of consumer and industrial companies and is a recovering stand-up comic. Professor Piyush and Shivina are currently also working on a book on account-based marketing. Last but not the least, our third speaker is Professor D.V.R. Seshadri, who is a clinical professor in marketing area and director of ISB-CBM. His areas of interest are business-to-business marketing, corporate entrepreneurship, and strategy. He has over 15 years of industrial experience before joining academics since 2000. Prior to joining ISB in 2016, he has taught at IIM Bangalore and at IIM Ahmedabad as visiting faculty. He works closely with several companies, providing them training and consulting services in his areas of expertise. After joining academics 20 years ago, he has developed over 100 case studies, authored several research papers, and co-authored 5 books. So, welcome all, and over to you, Professor Seshadri, to get us started.
Yeah, thank you, Asta and friends. A very warm welcome on behalf of ISB-CBM. I just want to take a minute or so to introduce this new topic, account-based marketing. This is an intriguing title. Many of you will wonder what's new about it. We have been doing marketing for decades. Many of you are senior people on this webinar today. Allow me to just take you through broad, maybe 3 epochs of how accounts have been looked at. When I was a student, maybe 3-4 decades back, we'd look at B2B markets in distinct segments. And then as time evolved, maybe 2 decades back, companies like Tata Steel said, segment is too broad in B2B. Each company, let's say in the automotive, Ashok Leyland, Tata Motors, everybody has different needs. So we have to look at it from an account perspective, find out their pain points. And they came up with programs such as customer value management, which were pretty incredible at that time. But now the world has moved on. There is tremendous technology focus, social media, internet, artificial intelligence, big data, and so on. So it's not enough to say, okay, I broadly understand an account and I'll go and sell to them. I'll look at what marketing needs to cater to their needs and so on. Today, it is basically that there are lots of people, especially in large customer accounts, and lots of people with varied interests. And unless we leverage all the technology and figure out what is it that each person is interested, what is his persona, and leveraging all the tools that are available to us, can we give a very concerted, focused message which engages him and creates very high level of experience. Today, people are tired and cynical about a lot of bombardment of messages. There's just too much information, diarrhea, if I may use a loose word, and nobody really gives too much attention to continuous stream of messages from supplier organizations unless they resonate with the person involved. So there's ideas like consumer, I mean the decision makers persona in the customer account and so on. And these are very, very new things actually emerging as the world of technology and its marriage with marketing is happening. So with these words, I think this is something which every marketeer who wants to win in today's world has to take serious cognizance of. And therefore, account-based marketing is absolutely vital for us to deeply understand. And I cannot think of a better duo to deliver this. Professor Piyush Kumar, he is an authority on this. He and Shivina Kumar are together jointly co-authoring a book. And I'm sure you'll have a very scintillating session. Over to Shivina and Piyush.
Thank you. This is Piyush. And I'll open up the discussion and then Shivina will take off somewhere from the middle part of the discussion. So thanks for the opening remarks and thanks for the introduction, Asta. So as D.V.R was saying, this is a reasonably new and very interesting and dynamic area, especially in business-to-business marketing, which sometimes is the less glamorous cousin of consumer marketing. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I got exposed to this idea about 3 years ago through Shivina because she started practicing account-based marketing, and during our conversations, it turned out that it's something brand new that I wasn't familiar with. It's still not there in the academic world for the most part because it's moving at such a fast pace, and it's a multi-pronged way of looking at accounts, which hasn't been there. So what I will do is I will take maybe about 10 minutes to lay the foundation for where the principle of account-based marketing is coming from. And then Shivina will give you some idea about at least, in a brief sense, about some of the things we need to care about as far as implementation goes. We are said somewhere in January, there's going to be a complete program on account-based marketing where you'll get to know the details from the principles to the last dot of implementation, and you'll get some hands-on experience on trying out various account-based strategies through exercises and simulations. Okay, so with that said, let's move on. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is where we are coming from. Okay, so as D.V.R said, that if you look at where business markets are today, which is kind of not too different from where the thinking in consumer markets was a few years ago, there's a huge amount of data that are available. And that gives us the ability to measure a variety of individual and collective behaviors, which wasn't there before. So now we can basically trace and track the thoughts, the progression of individuals and organizations. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The second thing is that marketing automation has taken root. And so our ability to act efficiently on the data that we collect is now better than it has ever been before. And this trend is not going to stop. So not only do we have a lot of information, but we have a hands-on ability to use algorithms to basically act upon it to meet our strategical and tactical goals. The third piece of the puzzle is that not only can we act on behaviors that are already exhibited by individuals and organizations in the past, but we can connect the dots. So based on historical behavior of that individual or other individuals like him or her, we can now predict what the next step is going to be. So if we observe a certain pattern, we can actually predict what the next step is going to be with reasonable certainty. And then if it is not in the desired direction, we can basically take corrective action. So in some sense, we have, our fingers on the pulse of individuals and organizations in a way which wasn't possible even, let's say, about 10 to 15 years ago. So that's basically the state of the B2B market today. Next, please. Now, if you see how we are taking advantage of this information and look at it from the buyer's perspective, and this is kind of a simplified way of putting the journey of a typical B2B buyer in perspective. And you can expand the number of stages, but for simplicity, we're just keeping it to 3. So typically, buyers move from an awareness stage where they become aware of the problem to a consideration stage where they actually start comparing solutions to finally making a choice. Now, just like there is information available for sellers, there is a variety of information available to buyers themselves. And the place where they look for information keeps on changing as they progress in their own journey. So if you become aware of your problem at that stage, you might start looking for ebooks or analyst reports or white papers. When you move to the next stage and you are in really seriously looking at the sector, the things that you want to purchase, you may actually move to a different set of piece of information. So you may start looking at videos, comparisons, testimonials. And then when you come down to finally making a decision, you may start looking at something a little more seriously. So you may get into some sort of comparison tools. You may want to look at the financial viability of the solutions. You may want to look at case studies regarding past successes. So as the buyers themselves move through the journey, they also move forward in the places where they look for information and the nature of the information that they are actually consuming. So now, because we can see where buyers are moving and buyers are themselves changing the place where they're looking for information, we have a situation. And next slide, please. So the situation is this, that if you're not really careful, because there are numerous vehicles that are available to sellers to sell information to buyers, and if you go back to the previous slide, there are multiple vehicles. People indiscriminately start pumping information. Okay, and when they indiscriminately start pumping information, if you wear the buyer's hat, they get exposed. In fact, they get bombarded with content which is not really directed towards them, and which may have only peripheral interest to what the real problem is. It may also not be consistent with where they are in their own journey. So one of the things that has happened now, and which is kind of a common problem with technology, that as time goes by, the cost of technology keeps on coming down. And given that we can automate a lot of content, the cost of sending content out is actually coming down. So this problem is basically, getting out of hand. Next slide, please. So really speaking, even though a buyer has a pretty specific need at every stage of its journey, the amount of information that they get bombarded with is, one, very large in volume, and second, very non-specific. Okay, and as you can see, this is coming because instead of individual marketers, algorithms are spewing out this information, and they are not still as smart as we would like them to be. So that's where the problem really lies. So there is low cost of information dissemination, it's programmatic, and it's non-personal. So you can flip this on its head and say, okay, so where is the solution? So the solution that people have found, and this is pretty new, is what D.V.R. was referring to. And it's a pretty comprehensive solution. So today, Shivina will refer to it in a little way, but ultimately in January, if you want to see, it basically touches about almost everything that the seller actually does. So the idea is to take a step back and say, okay, instead of sending this information indiscriminately to everybody, let's just think of them as markets of one. Okay. Now, this idea of thinking of individuals as markets of one is also not new. It's been there in consumer markets, but and business markets as well. But that's where we go back to. So ABM is basically treating accounts as markets of one and being really purposeful in our interactions with these chosen specific accounts. And some of the reasons because of which this has really taken off in the last 5 to 10 years is because it goes for precision and it does not really address non-consequential accounts. It actually turns out to be an extremely profitable way of allocating your marketing expenditures. Okay, so one of the prime drivers of ABM today is that it delivers much better ROI than almost any other marketing program that is out there in the B2B world. Okay, now once that piece of information came out in the public domain, almost all kinds of B2B organizations, starting with tech firms, started implementing and then seeing the success ramping up their ABM programs. Okay, so it's basically just picked up momentum most strongly in the last couple of years. So it's absolutely brand new in terms of its impact and in terms of its adoption. Okay, and you can see that the consequences are very positive. So customer acquisition cost goes down, revenues increase. Okay, so whether you look at cost or revenues or return on investment, on all three financial metrics, it seems to work wonders. Next, please. So I'll just walk through this in the sense of a principle, and then in the second half you will see some of the implementation details of how this is done. Okay, so let me start from the right hand side. So if you go to conventional, be both consumer and business markets, and this is the shotgun scattershot approach, where what is important is generating a good amount of leads, hoping that some of them will get qualified, and ultimately some of them will basically convert to a paying account and a financially profitable customer. So essentially what happens is that you follow what's traditionally been called a funnel-based approach, and you try to fill up the top end of the funnel with as many leads as possible. Okay, and typically that's where marketing comes into play. So you may have your marketing investments that will generate some sort of an awareness of the product or service that you're in the business of, and you try to basically fill up the funnel. And some of these people may actually move on to the next stage of the funnel, where they may actually show interest. And if they show interest, then typically the way organizations are structured, the leads get passed on to the sales team, and they take some of these people to the next stage of consideration, and ultimately some of them will sign the contract and close the deal. So the idea is that there are these multiple stages, and at every stage there is attrition. Everybody doesn't move on to the next one. And the way to kind of play this game is to fill up the funnel through marketing activities, and at some point in time hand it over as qualified leads to salespeople who then take it over. So this is the traditional way of running what is called funnel-based marketing. Okay. Now, account-based marketing, which is the picture on your left-hand side, is sometimes called flipping the funnel. Now, even this idea of flipping the funnel is talked about in more than the account-based marketing world. But here, what you do is you're not interested in numbers. Okay, you're interested in specific qualified accounts that are going to contribute meaningfully to your bottom line, and that have some sort of fit with the strengths that you bring to the table. So you purposefully identify who these accounts are going to be. So that's the first stage. So instead of a large number, this is a small number of pre-selected targeted accounts. Now, in the next stage, what you do is you go into each of these accounts. And as D.V.R. was saying, there are multiple people inside these accounts, and they participate in the purchase process in a variety of different capacities, and they have different considerations. So you go and take a peek into these accounts, and you say, okay, who are the people who will be involved? And you basically start expanding into the account. And once you know who these people are, then through different stages of their journey, you deploy a suite of tools. These could be electronic tools, these could be face-to-face tools, these could be events. So there is a variety of tools, and there is an appropriate one for every stage to engage these individuals. And then once they convert, and the likelihood of a large percentage converting is pretty high, then you use these converted individuals for what's now become a big thing called advocacy. So you use these converted accounts to basically acquire new accounts and expand your revenue base. So that's really the principle, that it's from lead based to an account based, from a funnel to an inverted funnel. Next, please. Okay, so another way of comparing, traditional marketing with account-based marketing is, and you can, this is just an example so just think of this as, one facet of marketing. So in traditional marketing, you try to get people to your website. You might do, a variety of what are typically called digital marketing activities. Once they come to your site, you try to figure out who they are. So you get them to fill forms. Once you get the filled form, you get a little profile of who these people are, and then you start sending them, a variety of content through emails or through other means. And then, depending on the response, you try to kind of identify who the targets are going to be. Okay. Still, it's kind of starting with a larger number who sometimes land up on your web page, who knows for whatever reason and from where, and then kind of drilling it down to some of them who might be of interest to you. In account-based marketing, you do still the exact opposite. You pre-select and target the accounts that you're interested in. And instead of bombarding them with indiscriminate content, you engage them through highly personalized campaigns. And both through your online and offline tools, you try to build a set of long-lasting relationships that can help you land the account, that can help you expand the account, and ultimately get you to the advocacy stage. Okay, so that's the difference between the two worlds. Next, please. Okay, now you will probably see this when we talk about the implementation side of things, that it's not kind of easy for any organization which exists in the B2B space to just flip a coin and just drop everything and just go to account-based marketing. Okay, so we have horror stories of companies which basically got enamored with the idea, shut down their conventional marketing operations, and just turned on a dime and went to account-based marketing, and suddenly kind of completely burnt their current revenue stream. Okay, so from an implementation point of view, it's not that it's an either or, black or white, flip a coin kind of a decision. You basically have to graduate into account-based marketing. And what you do is, in some sense, what the picture here is a combination of the two funnels, which were kind of laid out side by side. What you do is you kind of start out by kind of putting one on top of the other. So you still, once you are kind of moving in this direction, so you still continue with your inbound marketing activities, you still attract people, and you use that to basically identify the ones who might be of interest to you. And once you identify those who might be interested to you, you basically switch gears and treat them like the accounts of interest, and you can basically switch over with those specific accounts to an account-based marketing side of things. Okay, so from an implementation point of view, you might run both systems time. Okay, now even though account-based marketing is pretty new, most of it, at least in principle, refers to this idea of having this one-to-one relationship with specific target accounts. But there might not be enough of them. Okay, so people have taken the core principles of account-based marketing and kind of started expanding it to quote unquote your non-core customers. So you may actually do a full-blooded 100% account-based marketing on a one-to-one basis with your really important accounts. But you can basically compromise a little bit, scale it up, and do most of it at somewhat of a segment level. So this is called, a one-to-few. And then once, you've been successful with that, you can also take it to a larger number of accounts, and you can do one-to-many. Okay, so you can have what's called account-based marketing. Then you can have ABM Lite, which is the middle tier. And then you can have what is called programmatic ABM. So you can actually run it through a variety of accounts of different sizes with different levels of dilution. So it's not an either or. So you can you can get both coverage and the benefit of account-based marketing by basically combining the three different versions of ABM. Okay. Now, at this point, I'll just hand it over to Shivina, who will take you through, at least some introduction to the implementation details.
Cool. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much to ISB for having me. I'm excited to talk a little bit about IBM, some of my experiences, and then also answer any questions that come up after. So kind of to keep it rolling, the first thing to think about really is how do you implement ABM? So it's not, as Professor Kumar mentioned, it's not something where you just turn off traditional marketing and you turn this on. There's a couple steps that you really have to go through. And this is an organizational wide change. So ABM honestly isn't really a great name for this program. It's not just marketing, it's sales, it's leadership, it's your operations team, it's your finance team. Everybody really needs to have full buy-in into this being great for the company before you can even transition. So the first thing is generally ABM will come from the marketing arm of an organization. It's a marketing driven strategy. So once the team decides, okay, we want to transition to ABM, the first step is really getting buy-in. The reason behind buy-in is kind of twofold. One is you may sort of go through a reorganization of what your teams look like and what your organization looks like. And it is also a large sort of financial change. So you are going to purchase and implement new tools, and you kind of need to get buy-in from everybody before you start to make this change. The second really important part of this is purchasing and implementing the right tools and systems to transition to ABM. So like we've kind of mentioned, ABM is relatively new. It also means that it's pretty tech forward. So there are a lot of tools that you need to implement in order to track everything correctly, run the system correctly, and make sure you're not really missing anything. The third really big part of this, and it's sort of what we alluded to in the past slides, is you're building out what's called an ICP. So an ICP stands for an ideal customer profile. Now, customer, to be clear, does not mean a person or an individual. It means an account. It means a company. So what this means is we're going to start with a list of companies that we think are a great fit for our product, a great fit for our offering, and then figure out how to sell to them. That leads me to kind of point 4, which is agree upon a target account list. Now, this agreement, again, has to be across teams. This is a cross-functional effort. So the sales team needs to agree, okay, these are the 1,000 companies we really believe we can sell to that makes sense for us as a customer. And marketing has to believe, yes, we can get to these companies, we can market to these companies, we have the right offering, we have the right messaging, and we can get to them. This is an agreement. You don't start ABM until everybody is sort of aligned on this. And then the fifth one is start with ABM Lite and layer up to strategic ABM. So kind of in the previous slide, we mentioned that there's programmatic, there's one-to-few, and there's one-to-one. Now, I mean, if you think about it yourself, right, going one-to-one with 1,000 different companies is really difficult. 1,000 different marketing strategies for 1,000 different accounts is really hard. So what you have to do is think about which are the companies that are really strategic for you that will require that level of personalization and orientation to detail, and what are the companies that are good fits but maybe won't require as much personalization, and you'll kind of want to do both. So when you kind of think about the alignment piece, which I sort of mentioned, you want to start the process together, and you want to share all the data and all the research that you're coming across. The reason being, because this is a big change, everybody should be bought in, and the best way to do that is not by telling somebody that this is the right idea, but instead of every team sort of taking this journey together, going through the research together, and sort of believing, okay, you know what, I think that this is going to be helpful to our organization. When you start to go through ABM, it's rethinking everything. You're rethinking your customer journey. You're rethinking the definition of the very role of a salesperson or a marketing person. You're rethinking segmentation when it comes to markets, all of your data and analytics, and other things that kind of will bleed into your content strategy, your system design, etc. The next really big part of this is you want to prepare the teams for the new structure. I have definitely heard of companies who've made the mistake of just switching to ABM the next day, and nobody really knew what that meant. Especially when it comes to a sales team, for them to understand we're going to be restructured, for them to understand our jobs are going to change, the way we reach out is going to change. You want to prepare them before it happens. The third really big piece of this is the tools. Like I mentioned, ABM is pretty tech forward in the sense that there are a lot of tools that exist already that will help you run this program and track everything that you're doing, but they are new. There's older tools like Salesforce, which have been around for a long time, but there's a lot of tools that are built on top of that. So a really big part of this is using the tools correctly. And it's not hard, it's just you need to train for it. So it's best if marketing and sales train together, familiarize themselves with the tools together, and figure out how they can work together on the same platforms. And then the last one is set realistic expectations. You can't think that you're going to change a strategy and tomorrow it's going to boost your ROI tenfold. That's just not going to happen. You need to think through what is the timetable, how long is implementation, how long should it take for us to see real ROI, and set those expectations much before you actually transition. So I know this is sort of a complicated slide and you don't have to read sort of all of the details, but this kind of alludes to how account-based marketing works and what the funnel looks like. So like we kind of said before, account-based marketing means that you flip the funnel. So this is sort of how it looks when you're going through accounts that you want to sell into and that you ultimately want to create a customer out of. So lead generation, what that term really means is you're generating leads. Leads are companies or accounts that you've decided prior to that they would be a great customer. You have all these leads that you want to get to, and marketing will step in and support and try to feed all of these different companies different kinds of assets. These could be emails, webinars, blogs, social, direct mail, etc. And these are all acquisition channels. These are all ways for us to acquire leads. Now, I want to define what it means to acquire a lead. It means you are literally getting their information. So I'm sure all of you have attended events or webinars, you've given your personal information, you've visited some sort of gated website, meaning you gave your email address, your phone number, maybe first name, last name, etc. That's what it means to generate a lead. We need that information. So once we get that information from a variety of acquisition channels, it could be through landing pages, it could be through forums, we'll actually take that into a system and we'll start to score them. So what lead scoring means is it's an actual number. The number itself doesn't matter. Every company does it differently. It can be 1 to 10, 1 to 100. It doesn't really matter what the numbers are, but it's how you think about it. So when I make an account list of companies that I really want to sell into, there will be a certain percentage which are strategic accounts that I think are the best fit. Now you have to remember, every company is not going to be a perfect fit. Some are going to be good, some are going to be great, some are going to be perfect. Lead scoring helps you assign values to them. If marketing is helping you bring in a lot of good leads but not perfect leads, then your overall lead score is probably not going to be that high across the board. So you want to score every single account that's coming through to really get an idea of how good are the companies that we're actually getting. The next step here is a marketing qualified lead. So when you have all these acquisition channels out, you're getting a lot of great companies. You're also going to get some companies that you maybe don't care about. The lead scoring is also meant to be a gateway. It is meant to keep all the bad companies out and only pass through the good companies. This means that sales is never working an account, is never assigned an account that's not on the list. The list of thousands of accounts. No one has this memorized. So you have to have something in place to gate it so that no bad company gets through. That's what a marketing qualified lead means. The rest of the terms that you see on the page are sort of how do you convert an account from when it gets to sales all the way to a customer. But the really important parts are how do you actually get to a qualified lead that even gets passed to the team in the first place. And this is where ABM really shines through with a lot of different ways to make sure that only the good companies are the ones that we're selling to and everybody else is not being talked to. And this is sort of why ABM is even doing well, is it's that laser focus. It's that putting those blinders on and only going for quality companies instead of a high quantity. So there's a couple of different terms that are important to understand when you're thinking about ABM, the three being surging, responded, and influence. So we'll go through each of them. And why you look at this is you want to figure out what marketing is doing in terms of the leads that they're bringing in. So surging, what it basically means is that a company has demonstrated enough intent to be considered they're a qualified lead already, you think they're a good company, but they've demonstrated enough intent that you think there's an actual sell opportunity. So what that means is, let's say I am selling email marketing software. I'm looking for companies who want to be able to email in masses at a certain time. If somebody comes to my blog, that's interesting, but not really, because it doesn't really mean that they want to buy from me. But let's say they also go to my pricing page. That's a different story, right? That journey is a little different. It seems that they're interested in what I'm doing and maybe there's a need for my product. So that would mean that company is surging. What happens when a company is surging is that you create a score. So essentially what it means, and this goes back to the lead scoring, is you'll think of different actions that a company could take, and each action is given a certain weighted score. So maybe going to the blog gets you 1 point. Maybe going to the pricing gets you 7 points. Maybe going to an event gets you 10 points. The numbers themselves are arbitrary. It's the weighting that's important. What do you weight as high intent? What do you weight as low intent? The ABM account score, what that means is a lot of this is automated, right? So it's not that I'm sitting around watching the journey of every single company. This is automated. What the account score means is that there's a threshold. So as soon as, let's say, I pass 10 points, that company goes to sales. The reason for this is even if there's a company that's on our account list, but let's say they've only really read a few of our blog posts, they haven't shown enough intent for them to be passed to sales. And that opportunity is just not ready yet. And you never want to be sending leads to sales that are not ready. It's not good for anyone on any of the teams. The next one is responded, which is thinking of when companies take some sort of gated action. So that means they give you their email address for maybe attending a webinar, but they still haven't fully shown enough intent. And then influenced is companies that are already being worked by sales that have then sort of continued to interact with your content in some way and continue to engage with you, which is always great because if you have a company that came to your events that then is being sold to, but is continuously reading your content, it probably means that if you turn them into a customer, they're going to be a great advocate because they see you as a resource and not just another company that they're buying from. So what can marketing do? Obviously, it's account-based marketing in the sense of marketing will usually be the first ones to come with this idea and say, we should change the way that we think about selling to a company. So the first thing that marketing can do is really define a target account list. Let's go back to the email marketing software example so we can all kind of stay on the same page here. So if I'm selling email marketing software, there's a variety of companies I can sell to. I mean, you can think about it yourself. There's so many industries that would need that piece of software. What marketing can do is say, okay, let's look at our competitors. Let's look at where they're selling. Let's see what differentiates us, and let's see where maybe we can make an impact. And what marketing can do is say, come up with some research and say, maybe we're a good fit for retail companies, and come up with an account list. An account list literally means a list of companies. And then you can take that to sales. You can take that to other teams and say, do you think that this is a great fit for us to kind of start selling into? The second thing is creating this account scoring model. So it is marketing's responsibility to come up with a good threshold and gateway to make sure that sales is only getting accounts that are ready to talk to us. So ABM doesn't just mean you find good fit companies. They also need to be ready to talk to you. It's a two-way relationship. So the account scoring model is something that marketing thinks of and says, what pages of our website do we think are the highest intent that will probably indicate that this person is interested in not just our resources, but also in our product. So if you think about high intent pages, a pricing page, a demo page, if someone comes to you and says, I want a demo of your product, that's automatically going to sales because obviously they're interested in the product. Lower intent pages are blogs, sometimes webinars that are, generally just talking about the industry, not really showcasing if they want to buy your product or not. The third is creating content. So when you start to think about these accounts, the journey is pretty long in the sense that it's a very customized selling opportunity. So you need to think of top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel content that you can serve for each account depending on where they are. If you think back to the first few slides we talked about where there's that awareness, consideration, and decision-making process, top of the funnel would be the awareness, middle of the funnel is consideration, and bottom of the funnel is decision. The fourth piece here is help define a lead routing process. So what this means is once you have decided that there's a qualified lead, what happens to that lead? How does it get to sales? What's the process? How are they notified? How do they know what actions that account has taken before it got to them? These are things that marketing should and can define, and it's important that they take this ownership. And the last thing is air cover. So marketing's ultimate job always is we are enablement, right? We enable sales to close deals, to convert leads into customers. So our job is also to provide them with whatever content they need, whether that's customized, whether that's automated, to help them get there. So ABM, I guess not showing up, all good. So we talked about the ideal customer profile, and I think this is one of the most important pieces of ABM because this is really what aligns multiple teams. So the ideal customer profile is a shared definition across sales and marketing teams, also operations, also other teams that are involved, about what a best fit customer is. And this is, again, goes back to that point of laser focus, precision, and putting blinders on everybody in the company. If this is who sales is working, this is who marketing is focused on, this is who the operations team is focused on, and we're not deviating from that. How do you actually create an ICP? So you really want to create a customer data model, and there's a few ways to go about it, but here are some of the the biggest ones. The first one is you really choose criteria to determine the definition of the organization. So you're going to want to say, okay, we want to look for companies that are a certain employee count. They are in certain industries, they're in certain verticals, maybe they're in certain locations, maybe they have certain tech integrations, and they have a budget. This is obviously the most important part. You want to look for companies who have a budget to pay for your platform. Within the organization, then you'll look for personas. So let's go back to the email marketing software example. We're looking for companies who want to buy email marketing software. Now, we're going to figure out the best fit companies. Maybe it's retail companies, right? Retail companies send a bunch of emails about their newest clothes that they're releasing. Within those companies, I need to develop personas. Who am I actually selling to? Is it the marketing manager? Is it the director of email marketing? Is it the VP of marketing? I need to look through the marketing teams and decide on the personas. And so you'll decide these beforehand. What job titles do you care about? What team sizes do you care about? What team budgets do you care about? If a company has a 2-person marketing team, maybe you don't care about them. They're too small. They probably can't afford you. And this is something that has to be aligned across marketing and sales. If I care about talking to an email marketing manager, then so should the sales team, and vice versa. So you'll decide on these personas, who is the decision maker, who is going to be involved in the deal, and who might influence the deal. You'll also analyze your customer base. So kind of like we mentioned, you can start ABM when you're net new and you haven't done anything in marketing. You can also transition. You can have already had a business, you can already have customers, and then you can start to transition into an ABM strategy. So when you do that, you want to analyze your customers and look at your best customers. Compare, retention, revenue, team sizes, and you can use that to help inform what your ISP looks like. The next thing is you want to expand your insights outside of these pretty standard criterion that most companies will use. Look at the company itself. Are they having a lot of funding rounds recently? Have they had recent layoffs? Are there executive movements? This will sort of give you an idea of what's actually happening internally to the organization. If there's funding rounds, it's more likely that they're looking to invest in software. They're looking to invest in new product. If there have been a lot of layoffs, maybe not so much. And then you create tiers for prospects. So we always go back to this notion of there's a strategic set of accounts that you want to sell into, and then there's other customers who are still a good fit, but maybe not a great fit. So we kind of touched on this before, but you really need to focus on demand generation. So demand generation or lead generation, it's either or, is really the practice of creating, which is the generation, interest, which is the demand piece, in the market you're selling into around your product or your services. This can be done through a multitude of ways, inbound marketing, outbound marketing, and then account-based marketing. So to clarify here, because I think it's important to make this distinction, inbound marketing is when marketing does campaigns and people come in through a marketing action. Outbound marketing is when sales is going out and finding an account. That means I maybe one day I decided Coca-Cola is a great company for me to sell email marketing software to, and I'm on LinkedIn just messaging a bunch of people in their marketing team. They've never talked to us in any way. They've never interacted in our content. That's outbound. Account-based is both. Doing a little bit of inbound, doing a little bit of outbound. And then there's a lot of tactics that you can employ. So paid advertising or content marketing, field marketing, which is events. There's multiple ways you can do this for both. So we touched on the account score, and it's important to kind of understand what that means. This is really that quantitative way to prioritize and target the right accounts by putting some criteria in place. So like I said, it's sort of a weighted score. So you assign a value or a weight to different subsets of prospects, which are leads and also customers. And you'll kind of sort them from least profitable to most profitable. So the account score doesn't just depend on the actions that a company is taking. It also depends on the company taking those actions. If I have a strategic account doing a certain journey, I might weight that higher because I'm just excited that they even know who I am. And I'm just excited that they even want to interact with my content. And maybe that will get passed to sales versus maybe if another company was doing it that isn't as high up on my list of companies that I want to sell into, they might take the same journey and still have a lower score. I might say, you know, I don't want to sell to this company until they ask for a demo. I want to be absolutely sure they want to buy my product before I even have any salesperson talk to them. So scoring goes sort of both ways. It's based on intent-based actions, but it's also based on the organization and how strategic they are for you as a company. The key thing to also take note of is account-based scoring means you score the account, not a contact. So what this means is for companies that I really care about selling to, I might wait for multiple individuals in that company to interact with different pieces of content or different campaigns before I pass them to sales. I might say I want at least 3 people from an organization to have done at least 3 things before I score them high enough. So you can also sort of think about, it's not just an account, it's the people in the account that get scored and ultimately then get passed to sales. So when you think about ABM engagement and how do you do it, there's sort of like the low impact should do's and the high impact, you know, sort of must do's. So things like emails, nurture programs, which are automated emails, blogs, websites, those are things you have to do. There's no choice. You have to have those things exist. The things that are a lot higher impact for ABM, but are also harder to do, are things like in-person events or direct mail. Meaning, you know, let's say I bring 10 VPs into a room for a virtual event, and they're the 10 VPs of the 10 companies I really care about selling to. It's harder to put on. You know, it's definitely more expensive, but it's much more likely that I can sell those accounts. So when you start to do ABM, you'll think about, am I doing programmatic? Am I doing one to few? Am I doing one to one? And then based on that, where do I fall on this ABM engagement graph? Now, we talk about marketing and sales alignment, and it seems like it's common sense of why it would be important, but sometimes it's not for people. So some of the reasons why it's, you know, very important is, one, it can reduce a lot of the time that sales spends on analyzing prospects. So if you think about when we're trapped in that content farm and there's a bunch of leads that are being pushed towards the sales team, it's really hard for them to figure out intent. It's really hard for them to figure out the quality of the accounts. And they're going to spend a lot of time just analyzing these organizations, seeing if there even is a sell opportunity. And that's a lot of time wasted that could just be spent on actually selling a good account. So of course, it makes a lot of sense that conversion rates improve quite a bit when sales and marketing sort of share ownership of lead nurturing and also incubation of these companies that we all care about. Another big piece of this is alignment. It's often that marketing is running one campaign and sales is kind of off doing their own thing, and there's really no crossover, and that's a huge problem. First of all, if you just think about budgeting, you're spending money on the wrong people, and sales are probably not selling to the best clients if they don't know who marketing is talking to. So alignment is much, much higher when you decide on a list together, you decide on the accounts together, and then you go from there. And the last piece is people becoming clients. It's much more likely that someone will become a client if they feel like they've been sold to by an organization. I don't want to feel that just a salesperson cares about me. I want to feel that the organization cares about me, wants me to be a customer, cares about what I have to say. And if I feel that way because multiple people, multiple teams, multiple campaigns are being targeted towards me, that makes a lot more sense that I would want to be a customer. So one thing that is difficult when you're transitioning, given that marketing is usually leading this transition, is how do you empower sales? How do you make sure that they are confident in the change, and more importantly, how are they excited about the change? So the first thing is you should take a moment to be super transparent with yourself and kind of look within. How satisfied are sales with the leads that are coming from the marketing team? This is pre-ABM. Probably not super satisfied. There's probably a misalignment. There's probably a lack of focus, and there's definitely a lack of precision in the selling process. So going through that conversation together and coming to the conclusion, okay, we could be doing better. We could be more aligned, helps you in the long term of actually getting sales on board. Once they are excited about it, once they're aligned, you want to do a couple things to prepare the sales team. So the first is focus on buyer personas, not the group. So we kind of talked about this before, but you want to think of the different kinds of people that you could be selling into an account. So the first kind is an influencer. An influencer is somebody who is in the account, probably involved in part of the purchasing process, but they're not the ones making the ultimate decision, but they have the ear of the decision maker. So you want to make sure that you're giving them a great experience, and you want to make sure that they're out there fighting for you. A champion is one step above. That's somebody who probably is the person who will actually use your tool or service or product whenever the decision purchase is made, and they are the ones who really care about it. They are the actual executor. And if they are excited about your product, probably because it can change their life in some way, make them more efficient, make them more effective, you want to make sure that you're really feeding into that, making them be a champion for you to the decision maker. And then the decision maker is obviously that high level executive who ultimately owns the budget for the team that you're selling into, that will make the decision of whether or not they go with you. You, as a marketer, want to help sales define who these people are. When you're on the marketing side and you're running all these campaigns, you'll get a good idea of who's who. You have to determine all of your segmentation based on that. You're probably putting a huge budget and advertising behind that. You'll know who these people are. Sales will not. So it's part of your job to walk them through the process of who is an influencer, what are the job titles, where do they work, who are they, what do they read, where do they go to get information, helping them create this sort of idea of each person so they can target them correctly is really important, and it comes from marketing. This also leads me to kind of the second point here, which is you want to help sales map their accounts. So when you do account-based marketing, you map an account. What that means is you take an organization and you look at the people in the team that you care about, and you'll figure out who in this team do I think is an influencer, who in this team do I think is a champion, who in this team do I think is a decision maker. This should influence your outreach. It's just from the get-go, you should figure out who is who. This might change the selling process, but you shouldn't go into it blind. You should have a plan of, okay, I think this person is a champion. Maybe that means I give them a free demo. Maybe that means I give them a free trial of my product because I know they really care about it. And that's a marketing job as well. And then the last thing is you want to make persona-based content. So while sales is selling to these people, marketing should be providing air cover, kind of how we covered before, and have a content matrix that's ready to go so we can send the right content to the right person in the right organization at the right time. What does this actually mean? Let's think about it for an example for a second. So let's say, again, email marketing software, we're selling this piece of software and we've gotten to the VP of marketing. He's a decision maker. Maybe we are going to invite that person to an event with other VPs who already own our product so he can hear about it from our customers before he finally makes a decision. This is something that's only reserved for him. He's a decision maker. So you have to think about these kinds of activities that can help you talk to the right people at the right time, usually right before the decision is being made of whether or not they move forward with you. And these are some companies that are doing ABM well. So if you guys are interested to read some case studies of companies that have transitioned well, some of these are doing really, really well. On24 is a webinar technology. HubSpot is actually email marketing software, also helps you build your website. Drift is a chatbot that you can have on their website. So there's a multitude of companies here, but these are companies that have transitioned recently in the last about 2 years and are actually doing it really well. And they have a lot of content out about how they've done it. And that's all from us.
So, thank you, Shivina, and thank you, Piyush. There are a few questions, and we do have a obligation to close on time to be respectful of our audience time. So I got one question that came from the folks. Does it apply, this ABM, to B2B marketeers beyond technology space? But before you get into answering it, my own understanding of ABM, from whatever I've heard, is basically from the supplier firm's perspective. It brings better alignment in the organization. It also gives better bang for the marketing buck. From the customer angle, perhaps it is less clutter of messages from the supplier organization and therefore more credibility of the supplier organization. There's a lot more excitement, engagement, and so on. So given that it is a very powerful tool compared to what is currently being done by most organizations of carpet bombing, could you just answer, because even the list Shivina showed had mostly technology companies. So the question is, does it apply to B2B marketeers beyond the tech space? And then after that, there are two more questions which Asta will ask.
So I'll take the first shot and then I'll let Shivina take over as far as this question is concerned. So you're right that, given that this is, a tech forward way of thinking, the place where it first found root was in tech companies. And if you look at, the examples of the companies that have done best as far as ABM is concerned, the list that Shivina showed you, which is kind of course a partial list, it actually did start in tech companies, and that's where most of the great examples have actually come. Partly because they are used to using tools, partly because they are younger companies. But having said that, the basic principle of ABM is now spreading out because people have seen the better ROI. People have seen the benefits, no carpet bombing. And, the latest information that we had was, 70% of all B2B marketers have ABM as, some part of their overall operation. Okay. So Shivina, do you want to kind of add to this?
Yeah, I think it definitely started with tech companies, but there are other organizations that would make sense for. So another example is if you think about companies like Uber Eats or Postmates, food delivery companies that are selling in organizations to help them deliver food to their employees at a certain time. That's another example of companies who will use ABM to figure out what are the right organizations where we can sort of sell this plan to. So it started in tech, and that kind of makes sense, but it has definitely grown outside of it.
Over to Asta.
Yep. Thank you, Professor. So I have one more question from Somnath, who is asking, while persona mapping prospects, how do you get hold of potentially relevant data like product-wise revenue or more immeasurable factors such as company direction in terms of future plans? Are there any relevant tools to help in this beyond the usual media reports or LinkedIn posts?
Yeah, I can take that. So that's a good question. There are companies out there that actually exist with this data. So when you're doing persona mapping for accounts, there's companies like Zoom Info or Clearbit. These are tools where you can go in and actually find out information about the company. You can go in and find information about individuals. So when you're looking for at specific accounts, that's actually where you get all the information. That's part of sort of the tech stack when you're thinking about ABM. When you think about future reports or just sort of industry-wide knowledge, that's a research piece I sort of mentioned in the beginning. So there's companies like Forrester and Gartner. For those of you who haven't heard of them, those are research firms. Their business is to look at markets and look at industries, figure out what tools are needed, figure out what trends are upcoming, and then sort of provide that to companies who are wanting to sell into those markets and almost be consultants. So when you're looking for that forward thinking of what's the next big market I should tackle, what's the next big industry I should penetrate, you'll look at companies like that.
Thank you, Shivina. And I have one last question. For traditional organizations that do not use any marketing automation tool or social media, what are some of the simple tools to begin the light ABM plan?
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily need to be social media or anything like that. I think the best tool that you really need is Salesforce, actually. So, and there's ways to use that without having a pretty sophisticated organization. The point being, you can do pretty much everything in Salesforce. So if you want to start to create an account list, if you want to start to measure how your salespeople are reaching out to them, that's your best tool. It's also the most important tool because as you get more strategic with ABM, as you start to get more sophisticated, everything integrates into Salesforce. So if you have no other tool, that's the one you should start with, and that's the only one you really need.
Okay. I think we do have two more questions, but we have also 2 minutes. So do you want me to continue with the questions, or how do you want me to?
Maybe you can take just one more, and then we can call it a day.
Okay, sure, Prof. So for a minute, imagine a typical commodity B2B company like metal, cement, chemical, with almost no marketing function, but largely a sales team spread across geographies. There are a few hundred customers that may or may not be buying from you. How would ABM be rolled out in such a scenario? And how many customers can be selected for ABM given the limited size of the sales force?
Yeah, so I can answer that question. So the first step you really take there is you need to figure out how long that deal cycle is. How long does it take to actually sell to each of these companies? Given that you've probably been selling to them before, you should have a relatively good idea. That would answer your question of how many customers. So you basically should say if each rep is taking an X amount of time to sell to X amount of company, you can figure out how many customers should go to each salesperson. That list is based on that. So once you have that list, you can definitely roll out ABM because you're starting with their target account list. You don't need to have a super sophisticated marketing team to figure out the right accounts. What you need to have is focus, and what you need to have is a certain amount of automation there. So in that scenario, what you would do is you'd say, okay, each of our reps is maybe able to sell to 5 companies, and the deal cycle is a few months per each. So if I have 5 reps, 5 companies per each, that's a 25 company list. We start with those companies. You assign those accounts out amongst your reps, and then you start to be very focused. Marketing is air cover. That's something to remember. So a salesperson, even if there's no marketing air cover, they can research those accounts. They can figure out the right people in those accounts, and they can figure out different ways to talk to them. And then, later down the line when they have marketing, they can obviously help provide with more personalization.
So, Asta, you want to close?
Yes, Prof. Yes, I think we are just on time. So I think I would just like to give a vote of thanks. My laptop is getting stuck. So, as all good things come to an end, and this webinar is no exception, on behalf of ISB-CBM, I take this opportunity to thank Professor Piyush Kumar, Ms. Shivina, and Professor D.V.R. Seshadri for sharing their insights on this new way of B2B marketing. I would also like to thank the ISB staff members who have helped in organizing this webinar and reaching our participants in a seamless manner. And a big thank you to all the participants who have joined today and taken out time from their busy schedule. I hope you have found this useful. Please do visit our website isb.edu/cbm to get more details for the program on ABM. And you can send us your queries at the mail address that I have already given in the chat box. Please stay safe from the pandemic and have a great evening ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
one
you.
and all.